I get the question a lot, Joe, of how do you know what your next step is, what to do next? And I tell people to pick something and try it, something of interest. It's not going to be a waste of time. Now, I'm not saying go out and quit your day job and do something extreme. I'm saying, you can volunteer for different
Right.
things just to see if you would like doing that function or whatnot. But it's never a waste of time because you're going to learn something and you're going to develop some skills and you're going to make some connections that's going to benefit you somewhere in the
Right.
future. Nothing that I've ever done, Joe, has been a waste of time.
Yeah.
It's been a stepping stone for where I am now. And then the other side of that, Joe, is sometimes because we've had experiences where, oh, I'm going to try my hand at this. Because I've tried my hand at a number of things, and not just within my career, outside of my career, entrepreneurial
Hmm.
minded. And when I think about it, it's just hilarious. But as you are trying to figure out what that thing is for you, what that next move is for you, sometimes you try this, you try that, and you start to feel like, well, people are watching and thinking I have no clue what I'm doing. And really, and I know I've talked to so many people that said, I tried this and this didn't work out, and I know people have this opinion, and I had to let that
Hmm.
go. I had to completely let it go. Because again, it goes back to there's something I learned in it. Joe, I sold uh, children's party supplies.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's on your list
And
of things
there's
you've
things
done.
that I've learned in that. I'm
That's on your
sorry.
list of things you've done that you can bring up in a
That
meeting. You can
that
say, need someone to sell party supplies? I'm your person.
but now I know there's different things that I know how to do. I know how
Yeah.
to get products made and things like that, and you know skills that I can use elsewhere. I am not trying to go and find party supplies for anyone, but there are things that I've
Yeah.
learned from that
Yeah.
experience. And so that's why I say none of it's wasted.
Really happy to have Nicole Calhoun with me today on Titans of Transition. Nicole and I met on the John Maxwell team, and as we were serving together in that organization, we got to know each other a little bit more, and turned out we had a similar background. And I've been wanting to ask Nicole to come on the podcast because I think she has some great insights that she can share with those who feel a little bit stuck. So Nicole, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you for having me. I'm excited for this conversation and to be here.
This was a volunteer kind of position that we were in, helping pull together data from the very large John C. Maxwell leadership training organization. Since we both have a background in IT, we volunteered, but we kind of got enlisted into these different roles of helping to serve. And it was great getting to know you then. And what I didn't know, of course, I knew as part of the John Maxwell organization that you were also trained and certified as a coach, trainer, and speaker. But I didn't know you were doing so much speaking. Can you talk to us a little bit about the speaking engagements? I've seen your postings on LinkedIn in particular. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, yeah. So, as you know, Joe, we kind of talked a little bit about my passion for career advancement with women in STEM. And so, as part of the John Maxwell community, I've gotten connected with different people who have similar passions to mine. And one of which is the empowering women industry. And so, I'm very closely connected with them. And I've been very much involved with it for probably the past 5 years. And so, you'll see me pop up here and there speaking with women, not just in technology, but women in other fields where there's not as many women within those fields. So you have women in construction, women in welding, in just different areas that we're not traditionally expected to be within those different
Mhm.
fields. So those are some of the things that I'm really closely connected to. And then there's some other speaking engagements I've done in the IT space because of my background in IT. And it's more so centered around my story and my passion for career advancement, professional development, those areas where we want to move forward in our careers and professionally, but we don't know exactly what it is that we need to do to get there. And so a lot of my speaking engagements are booked by organizations that have an audience that are in that area where they feel like, well, I know that there's more for me to do. I just don't know how to move forward. And I totally enjoy doing this, Joe. I really do.
It's just interesting because I think, like you, well, I don't want to presume, but For me, I came to get very interested in coaching probably 20 years ago, at least 20 years ago, after I had my own coach that really helped me professionally. And my desire to help others through those kind of periods of time where they lacked clarity or just felt a little stuck. And just before we pressed record, we were chatting about that and how there is quite a few people who do get into that situation where, for one reason or another, they feel there's just something missing or they feel stuck. And it sounds to me like a lot of your engagements, both speaking and I assume coaching as well, is kind of in that space.
Yeah, so it really, like you said, it was born out of your experience having been
Right?
coached. Mine was born out of my experience to develop myself personally. You mentioned that my background is in technology, so I spent 20 years as a software engineer, software developer. The titles change over time. I was a computer programmer at one time, but it's all the same thing.
Yeah.
But I spent 20 years doing that. And but even prior to that, I knew that there was always something more for me to
Mm.
do. But I don't know if it was that 20-year mark or I'm not sure what it was, but I started feeling, it's time for me to kind of take those skills that I have that I've cultivated in that role as a developer, software engineer, and to see what else I can do with that. Discovering that I had transferable skills that I could use in different areas for different roles, and deciding to take this professional development journey.
Mhm.
And it was on that journey that I realized that, well, one, other people started noticing the transformation in me. And you mentioned, I can't remember if it was prior to we hit recording, if you mentioned Toastmasters or now, but, getting involved in Toastmasters to improve my communication skills and things like that, because I was very techie and I
Mhm.
spoke very techie.
Mhm.
And people didn't necessarily understand what I said all the time.
Right.
Uh, but working on that professional development and then starting to help other people work to develop themselves in that way as well, and watching them grow and advance themselves in their careers, experiencing promotion and job transitions and things like that. I realized I really enjoyed seeing that transformation and being a part of it, and knowing that I had some type of role in that. And really, that's like you, that's how that passion was birthed in me.
Yeah, I think I resonate with that a lot. And it is a journey. And now you have a role, a VP level role, I believe, in learning and development. And it's really interesting. So I think the importance of that to career is so huge, almost regardless of what your career is. I mean, it's the relationships. I mean, it's not like we're sitting off on a missile silo, probably a bad example, waiting for someone to give us the order to fire a missile or something crazy, or we're isolated and alone. Let's think of another example where you're just working in a wood
Okay,
shop or something.
it's
I
better.
think that's probably a lot better. This will be in the outtakes. So you're working on a wood shop or something like that. You're just creative and it's just for yourself and you don't have to worry about it. But in the modern era, most of careers have a huge component that requires interacting with other living human beings. And in technology, especially in the early days, you are valued primarily for your technical contribution and you're kind of off to the side a little bit. But as you want to grow in your career and you're not sure what moves to make, I often find people I coach saying, well, tell me about your relationship with your boss, or tell me about the relationship with your internal customers. And I tend to get stares, blank stares back. And I think that is totally on the developmental path. That really isn't something that you get taught, as you're learning technical skills. There's some of it comes in when you're doing business analysis and things like that. You need to know how to interview people and gather requirements, but it's still kind of sterile in a way. And yeah, that's where the big growth areas I think really are. So for me, I came into the whole technology space from the laboratory as a scientist, as a user of a particular application, and then shifted into IT. Not so much from programming. I was dangerous in programming. I was. This is back in Fortran 77, and I was like, why do I have to start in this particular column? I just don't understand it. Um, so I was very dangerous. So it was good for me to get away from that. However, what I found was that really it was being able to influence others, and being able to understand what their requirements were and deliver solutions for them, but you had to listen. But sometimes you had to influence. That ties into John Maxwell's statement about what is leadership, not influence, nothing more, nothing less. And it seems like such a, catchy thing to say, but it's so true, don't you think?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, if you think about the further you go into your career and the more responsibility that you have in your career, much of what we get done is through people.
Yeah.
And if you can't influence people, then you're going to have a hard time gaining buy-in. You're going to have a hard time, right?
Yeah.
You're going to have a hard time with change management. You're going to have a hard time in so many different areas if you don't have that influence with people. We're not on islands. We can't accomplish anything by ourselves. We everything that we do within I don't care what your role is, it's going to require some type of connection, collaboration with people. And that influence is a big part of that's one of the skills and I don't know, a core competency, whatever you want to call it, that is really important to anybody's career, regardless of what it is that you do. And like you mentioned, um, within technology, the push has always been to make sure your skills, you're up to date on your technical skills. Uh, it's not that those soft skills are not valued; they're just not emphasized as far
Yeah.
as developmental areas.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's really true. Now, one of the organizations that I think you've spoken to or you're involved with was STEM, right?
Mhm.
Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I thought that was really interesting. And some people may not even know
Yeah.
what that organization is, so if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, so STEM is really not an organization. It's really a classification of different roles that where we see there is a population uh, that is underrepresented. And so STEM stands for science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And these are jobs and roles where you don't see it's a low population of women and also minorities. And so there's been a focus in, I would say, a real push in the last 10 years to start at the elementary level, in the school, the elementary level of schooling, to educate on these different jobs and roles and opportunities um, for young people to gain that interest. Uh, People do what they see other people do. We're more likely to say, I want to be a teacher if all we see is teachers.
Mhm.
I want to be a doctor if all we see are doctors. If we begin to see scientists that look like us, if we begin to see technologists and those other areas, and then we'll have more of a population of more grounded population of people in those roles. And so I am really involved in a way where I work a lot with I don't by the way, I don't do as much coaching as I used to. I would say that because of my
Yeah.
role that you mentioned earlier. And so I still do speaking, but I don't do as much coaching as I used to. But my focus in my speaking and my coaching was really on those areas because if I can help the next person that looks like
Mhm.
me, and particularly it's women that really they're more drawn to me. Not that I'm not drawn to them, but they kind of find me because of my
Yeah.
story, because of my background, because they've heard my struggles of advancement, because they've heard me say, this is how I was able to get where I am, or these were some missing parts that I didn't know I was missing, right? And so that area of STEM is really something that is a passion for me because again, when you show up in these areas, when I was in technology, it I would be the only person on my team that looked like
Yeah.
me. And so if I can help the next person feel confident in their skills and what they do and what they bring to the table and in advancing in their roles, then I want to do that. I want to be a part of that. That is something that I absolutely love doing.
That's really, I think, great. And it's interesting because one of the things I know I'm retired, but one of the things I do on the side is I facilitate a couple professional IT leadership groups, one at the CIO level and another one at the director level. And we started doing some breakout meetings, most of them remote meetings, for women because even in those organizations, even in this sort of representative collection of leaders, there's a low percentage of women. And one of the key issues, I think, is just what we're talking about: is how do you get more representation? How do we get more support for women advancing? What are the real issues that the guys don't want to talk about, right? I mean, what are those key things? And I've been starting to invite folks in, and may have to invite you in for a special call,
Oh, I
other
love that.
leaders, women leaders, to speak to these very specific issues and real challenges. And there is
Mhm.
definitely underrepresentation there. That's totally for sure. And I have to say, some of the best bosses I've had in my career are women,
Mhm.
bar none.
You know, yeah, and I what I find is that when you think about mentorship, right? If my if all of my if managers or my bosses are men, there's nothing wrong with that. But I find that like people go off to lunch together.
Yes.
They spend more time together. And there's that natural mentoring or relationship partnership that occurs where you're learning these things that you need for your role and to advance. And when that opportunity is not there, or I mean, the opportunity has to be intentional, right? It's because it's not a natural relationship. And
Right.
so while women are very capable, I mean, we run households.
And
Not
work.
to say men don't, men do that too. We all do it,
Yeah.
right? We are all capable of doing it. But there are things that I feel like have been missing that we didn't know,
Yeah.
and having those types of partnerships, those mentorships, opportunities, I feel have been key for others. And so right now, part of what I do, I feel like I am a mentor to other women. I try to mentor at least, not just coach, but mentor it
Mhm.
other at least one or two women at a time, right, at a given time. And that's because there's just things that we have not been information we haven't been privy to, and it's not that it's been hidden.
Mhm.
It's just it has not been a natural
Yeah.
occurrence, right?
Well, this is, I think, a good point to maybe pivot and talk about your journey a little bit more. You hinted at a few minutes ago, talking about uh, lessons that you had learned, and the way you answer those questions to other women and to others. So can we do that? Can we talk about your journey? And you talked about starting out as a programmer analyst, and then programmer analyst became software engineer, but it's really pretty
Yeah.
much the same work. But tell us a little bit
Yeah.
about that. And you dropped a few words in here that I suspect are going to be important, like intentionality or being intentional and those kinds of things. So tell us a little bit about your journey and how you got to your success that you're in right now.
Yeah. So, as again, at one point in my career as a software engineer, I decided that I wanted to expound on my skills, expand my skills rather, and see what else I can do, what else I was capable of. Uh, but I kind of stayed within technology,
Mhm.
even though I wasn't developing anymore. I moved into project management. I wanted to take again those transferable skills and use them in those areas. And you kind of mentioned, when you're doing analysis and things like that. And there were some roles I was in where we didn't have BAs, and we didn't have we didn't have PM, so we had to fill it in the blank
Right.
to do some of these things. And it was a good thing for me because it kind of opened the door for me to go into project management. So entering into project management, uh, I was, I don't want to say forced, but I had to develop emotional
Oh
intelligence,
yeah.
right? There are some things that are natural to us, but there are some things that self awareness, right? Relationship
It's
management,
huge.
social awareness, all these different things that uh, me as a developer working in my small team, I may not have had to develop, but as a project manager, I had to have conversations with people that were my peers, and I had to have conversations with people that were well above my
Yeah.
peers, and I had to be, I was responsible to delivering the project and to communicating what was going on. And so that kind of pushed me
Absolutely.
into uh, developing these different leadership
Wow,
skills
such
and
a
learning.
great, if I interrupt you a second, such a great example, because those who may not be familiar with what project managers have to do, at least inside of information technology, you don't have people reporting directly to you in these kinds of roles. You definitely
Yeah.
have to be able to influence people. Not only do you have to know what's going on and with a myriad of different tasks at the same time and track who's supposed to be doing what on what the time scale is and manage all that very analytical things. But at the same time, you have to go and convince people to stay on the with their commitments they've made. And you're right, they're all throughout not even within IT, they're throughout the business and all up and down the management chain. So it is a great example of how leadership really is influence. And if you
Oh
haven't, if
yeah.
you've been in a job that is delivering against a specification, you still had to do, like you said, BA, business analysis. You still had to talk to your end customers to a certain level, but there's a difference between saying, what do you want? And this is what you committed to. Are you going to get it there on time?
Oh
There's a
yeah.
huge difference there. What a great example.
And why can't we get it there on time? you know, but there are so many. As you're talking about that, that was a lesson on influence for
Oh,
me.
yeah.
That I had to find ways to connect with people. We talk about common ground, and that there's different. We have different
Mm-hmm.
backgrounds, right? We have different experiences. And so trying to find that avenue to be able to connect and to build relationships, because if I didn't build these relationships, I wouldn't be able to influence these people. I could name drop,
Sure.
but that only gets you so far. There is an element of gaining trust. All of these things that were these soft skills, right? That's not learned in keeping up with your technical skills. So I had to learn how to do all these
Yeah.
things just to get my job
Yeah.
done, just to get my job done.
Right.
And then if they had conflicting commitments, competing commitments,
Yeah.
right? Uh, the people that you work with on these project teams, they're on other
Yeah.
projects. And how do I convince them that can you put your
On
time
my
on
project.
this thing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes
So
you have to then reach out to the other parties who have their time committed and try to work out deals. It's a very multifaceted position. And it's interesting, when you stepped into that, was it sort of, were you thrown into the deep end, or did you have mentors to work with you through the process? It was pretty much go for it, Nicole.
It's funny because I was speaking to someone recently, and I said once you get to a certain level, you just kind
You have
of
to learn it
you have to figure
on
it
your own.
out.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so while I didn't have official mentors, I did have one or two people who helped me to understand how to do this within the org that we were
Yeah.
in, right? Because it looks different everywhere you go. But I was very much thrown into the deep end. And although we don't like being thrown out there, there's a lot that we can learn. I tell people it was either sink or swim,
Hmm.
and I didn't want to sink.
Right.
So I had to swim. But there's a lot that I learned and a lot that I am capable of doing now that I wasn't capable of before, because as a developer, at the time, now I know we're in an agile world now,
Yeah.
and keep in mind, I was a mainframe programmer, okay?
Not very agile.
So yeah, yeah. So now that we're in an agile
Yeah.
world, you are facing more of your stakeholders, more of the senior leaders. But in the
More
world
often.
that I was in, I kind of hid
Yeah.
behind people, and even my end users that I interacted with, they were not at the senior level.
Hmm.
And so coming out of that role into project management, I I had to toughen up. I had to learn. Some of it was learning on the job. Some of it was through what I talked to you about, just the professional development courses and training that I took on. Uh, but even in that, you asked me about my journey. Even in that, I was stuck for a long time where I felt like I couldn't get to the next level.
What did you do?
And what did I
Yeah.
do? I well, I continue to push
There you
forward.
go. Yeah.
I continue to grow myself. At the same time, I challenge myself in other areas to say, okay, Nicole, and I did move out of project management. I moved out of project management and started working more in the IT risk area. It was still managing. I was still managing things, but it wasn't project management in a traditional sense. So I did that for a couple years. Um, but eventually, what I did, and I think this is really going to be key for me. There is a talk that I do that's called "Being Uniquely You," the courage to be uniquely you. I took a step back and I realized I asked myself, Nicole, what is hindering you? What is keeping you from moving forward? I can't point the finger at anyone else and say, I mean, to some degree, there are some limitations that we have within the workplace. But what can I do to push myself forward? So, some of the things that I noticed was I was not showing up completely as
Mhm.
myself, meaning because I had a perception of what I should be in the workplace, I didn't offer up the skills that I had that I was very much capable
Mhm.
of. Excuse me. So I had to kind of peel that back and deal with that. I also had to learn how to toot my own horn. I was in a mindset that I've grown up to be and been taught to be humble and meek and things like that. But in that, I understood that to mean never talk about the good that you do, your accomplishments and things like that. And I had to go back and
Mhm.
relearn some things that if I do something wonderful, or if I run a marathon, I don't care where I come in at, but if I run a marathon, I'm going to talk about it and I'm going to be excited about it. And basically, I'm tooting my own horn, but I'm not being prideful.
Right.
And so I have to learn how to communicate my value, right?
Right.
And own that. And so that was one of the things that I did. And I also had to understand what I brought to the table, and stop diminishing uh, my capabilities. Stop assuming that everyone can do what I can do. Stop assuming that oh, it's what I'm doing is small. It's not a big deal. I had to within myself uh, recognize that I am bringing something significant to the table. That whole mind
Yeah.
shift, right? It I think that was one of the key things that helped me to end up going to the next level. And so going to the next level for me was when I said, you know what, Nicole, you know that this is your passion. So why not start doing that full time? And that's actually when I went to the next level, when I owned all that and I owned it within my passion, that career advancement, professional development, helping people advance themselves. That's when I was able to elevate to the next level.
Yeah. So that last comment about passion, we've heard a lot about, career advice talking about get in touch with your passion. And I do think it's an important element. I like to visualize like a Venn diagram that passion is one of those circles, your skills, your talents, or I would use the word gifting,
Oh
your
yeah.
natural abilities, because you can learn skills and you can be proficient in skills, but I find that the things that come more naturally to you give you energy and light you up.
Oh yeah.
When that overlaps with your passion, then you're starting to get someplace. You've started to get clarity and identified a bit of a sweet spot. Of course, there's the practical things too, like can I make any money at this? It's a bubble or circle that needs
Yeah.
to be looked at. But yeah, I think that's that point you made about humility, though. If we can go back to that just a second, we have I think in our cultural upbringing, some of us have that mistaken, and you kind of underlined that mistaken concept that being humble means not being truthful about what your capabilities are. I think the idea is you don't want to get too puffed up and beyond what's the sane estimate of your abilities. If
Yeah.
you're being truthful and you're putting it out, support myself. That's
Yeah.
another. They're in a generous way. Like I can help with that. I can do that, and you offer
Mhm.
it, and then that really benefits the organization. People will sense if you're being authentic or if you're trying to puff yourself up, either out of your own expanded view of yourself or out of insecurity, because that happens too. People try to get accepted by kind of overselling their skills at times or their abilities. So I think that was a big aha moment, I think, for you when you realized I'm really holding a lot back here. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah. It,
great.
it was. And Joe, I have to say, it was hard.
Yeah.
It took some getting used to. And I had to be able to um, talk about my accomplishments and my skills and my talents, my abilities in a way that was comfortable for me. And so when I talk to other people that where this has been something that's kind of held them back, I tell them you have to be comfortable with it. You have to be able to do it in a way that's comfortable for you. For me, I tell it in story format. I talk about it in star stories.
Mhm.
I use that, right?
Mhm.
Story format. Uh, but until you're comfortable with doing it, it's always going to feel
Yeah.
awkward. What I'm talking about, uh, it didn't all happen at once. It didn't all
Wasn't an
happen in
aha
a year.
moment.
Yeah, yeah. Even uh, understanding that I had to bring my full self to the table. It didn't all happen at once, and so I'm saying that to say that when you hear people's success stories, for some reason we believe that in one moment they weren't successful, the next moment they were. And it's really not like that.
Yeah.
It's like an onion. You start peeling back layers and realizing, wait, this area is hindering me. The way I'm thinking in this area is hindering me. And what am I going to do about it?
Mhm.
So it wasn't instant, and I'm hoping that the listeners will understand that it it's very much normal to reach a certain point, feel like you're getting nowhere, but you are,
Yeah.
and then realize there's something else you need to
Well,
work on. That's a very
it's
normal.
actually when one says that, it kind of might be disappointing, but actually it's a good thing because with each of these kind of revelations that you might have, there's a bit of risk. And so it gives you the capability. There's a couple things I think of. It gives you the capability of taking small incremental risks and validating you're going in the right direction. Um, so that's really should be comforting. Um,
Mhm.
the other thing is that we're not particularly good at having the long view in mind. I like to use the analogy, and I've kind of overused this in this podcast, but of climbing mountains. If you've ever done that or climbed shoulders. When you live in Colorado, you take offense of people having these small hills and calling them mountains, but you can't see the summit. You might think you have that kind of long range view or know where you're headed or you have the ultimate solution, but often that learning journey is, you know, summiting all these shoulder peaks and then reassessing
Yeah,
where you are and replotting your course and going forward from there. So it should be encouraging to
yeah,
think. I like peeling the onion though. I'm going to use that for sure.
yeah. Yeah, yeah. It's definitely a journey, uh, but it's very worth it. And there's some rewards at every,
Stage.
those smaller little peaks that you achieve. As I think back when I moved into project management, and I did that for a few
Mm-hmm.
years, I realized I didn't like project
Oh yeah.
management. Uh, but it was not a waste of time for me.
Ooh, that's good.
I learned what I liked and what I
What you
didn't
didn't
like.
like.
Yes, but I also
Yeah.
grew significantly in different
Yeah.
areas that I'm using today. So it wasn't a waste of time. And I get the question a lot, Joe, of how do you know what your next step is,
Mm-hmm.
what to do next? And I tell people to pick something and try it, something of
Mm-hmm.
interest. It's not going to be a waste of time. Now, I'm not saying go out and quit your day job and do something extreme. I'm saying, you can volunteer for different
Right.
things just to see if you would like doing, that function or whatnot. But it's never a waste of time because you're going to learn something and you're going to develop some skills and you're going to make some connections that's going to benefit you somewhere in the
Right.
future. Nothing that I've ever done, Joe, has been a waste of time.
Yeah.
It's been a stepping stone for where I am now.
Well, is that a view looking back in time?
Oh, it's looking
Yeah.
back.
Because,
Because yeah, it's definitely looking
but I would
back.
say now, having been, I think after you've been through several of these different shifts that you realize you learned something from it. Now, probably as you look at something going forward, you're a little bit more intentional. You have that in your mind. I learned something, so worst case, I'm going to learn something. But you
Yes,
don't know
you're
that when
right.
you're younger, and early in your
No.
career. And sometimes you're in the middle of something, and it just feels like you're jumping back and forth, and it can get very discouraging. You're not quite sure why.
Hmm.
People sometimes think there's something wrong with them if they go and take a position or a role and it's really hard and they don't feel real good about it. I think it's very good to have that glass half full perspective, saying, well, at least I'm, what is it about this that I don't like? All right,
Yeah.
given the choice, I wouldn't do this again. Maybe they're just missing some skill or knowledge. That's always could be the case. But if they have this requisite skills, knowledge, and they still just, it drains them. I always like to use the energy diagnostic. If it just drains you,
Mhm.
you feel like you're dragging a boulder up a hill, write this down. Do not repeat this, because there's enough. Everyone has something. I'm back to gifting again. Everyone is gifted in certain things. And it's almost the opposite. It's like you could do that 12 hours a day and feel energized by it.
You can get lost in it, actually.
Yeah. Yeah. You go, where'd the time go? But if it's the
Yeah.
opposite, it is huge value to know what you want to say no to in the future.
Yeah. Yeah. And then the other side of that, Joe, is sometimes because we've had experiences where, oh, I'm going to try my hand at this. Because I've tried my hand at a number of things, and not just within my career, outside of my career, entrepreneurial
Mhm.
minded. And when I think about it, it's just hilarious. But as you are trying to figure out what that thing is for you, what that next move is for you. Sometimes you try this, you try that, and you start to feel like, well, people are watching and thinking I have no clue what I'm doing. And really, and I know I've talked to so many people that say, I've tried this and this didn't work out, and I know people have this opinion, and I had to let that
Mhm.
go. I had to completely let it go. Because again, it goes back to there's something I've learned in it. Joe, I sold uh children's party supplies.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's on your list
And
of things
there's
you've
things
done.
that I've learned in that. I'm
That's on your
sorry?
list of things you've done that you can bring up in a
That
meeting. You
that
can
is
say, need someone to sell party supplies? I'm your person.
but, now I know there's different things that I know how to do. I know how to,
Yeah.
get products made and things like that, and, you know, s skills that I can use elsewhere. I am not trying to go and find party supplies for anyone, but there are things that I've
Yeah.
learned from that
Yeah.
experience, and so, that's why I say none of it's wasted.
Well, if you were to think back and if or in your coaching, I know you're not doing that much because you have a full-time job and you also have other things going on. So, but speaking, if you were to think back and what advice you would give yourself now that you know what you know, it's that question. Or, if you have a younger or someone earlier in their career that you're coaching, are there certain nuggets that you share with them? I mean, it might wrap some
I
of this stuff together in a certain way.
Absolutely. The first thing is become comfortable in who you are. One of my problems is I was raised by a very strong-willed mother,
Ah,
and I can be very strong-willed. And because of the perception of what I thought was expected of me, I kind of held a lot of that back. But it's those things that made me who I am that's actually what I'm really great at,
yeah.
right? There are situations where I've had to be very analytical as a child, and that made me into a very logical person, a problem solver, right? It's some things that have made me very determined. So that's what I was talking about when I saying, I had to stop holding back who I was and be who I am, because those things are my superpowers,
Yes.
right? Those are
Your gifts.
there was yeah, yeah. And the other thing, I think the one of the big mistakes I made early in my career is the thought that I am here to do my work, complete my work, and
Mhm.
leave. I did not make connections. I did not build my network. And I think I could have been further along if I had. And the reason why I say that is the last three positions that I've gotten through my network.
Mhm.
So I spent prior to the company I'm with now, I was at my previous company about 9 years, and then I spent about, I would say, another 9 years at my current company in the same
Mhm.
role. And within the past 7, 8 years, I've been able to take 3 different roles, and 3 of those roles, I mean, all 3 of them were through my network.
It's huge.
Yeah. So building those
Relationships.
relationships, yeah, it's important. I'm not saying that, that you have to divulge all of your personal business, your deepest, darkest secrets with people on the job. But what I am saying is these are real
Yeah.
people and make real connections with people. And just doing that helps you to understand, learn about the organization, what's important for the organization, how to uh, be politically savvy because that's needed,
Yes, it
right?
is. Yes, it is.
So yeah, those 2 things: bring yourself, your whole self, to the table. Don't hold back, and make those connections and build your network.
That's awesome. And then those networking connections, I get a little bit annoyed with, LinkedIn is great in many ways, but you get these connection requests from people, and sometimes, you know, I'm retired. I have a little side thing I do, business, but I don't really need to boost my sales. You know what I mean? And I'm getting people
Yeah,
pounding me, and I'm like,
yeah,
oh, this person looks like they are
yeah.
actually in my field, and they cloak it sometimes. And then I give it about an hour. Usually about an hour later, I get another message or an email that'll say, hey, I've got this product. Would you be interested? I'm like, oh, you know,
Yeah, we're not talking about building your network in
no,
that
but what
way.
I'm saying is the time to think about it and the way to think about it is not along those lines. It's not what you get. I think the relationships that are of value, you have to enter into them having sort of a servant's kind of perspective. How can you
Yes.
support the other person? And
Yeah.
you 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 have to build the relationship by giving something, not immediately wanting to take.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's my soapbox. Well, this has been great. What are you currently in the middle of? Or you have anything coming up that you're going to be doing? Are you going to be rinse and repeating some of your talks, or am I going to get you
I
on my private CIO group to special call? That'd be one possibility. Here I am pulling from the relationship. Strike this. What's
Oh my
coming up for
goodness.
you, Nicole?
So, what's coming up, I do have that organization that I told you I work with. I'm a part
Mhm.
of Empowering Women in the Industry. They have some things coming up later, third quarter, I think it's fourth quarter, that I'll be doing. With the workload that I have now in my job, it kind of limits what I
Sure.
can do. I am working on a new talk.
Oh.
I'm not working on it fast enough, but it's called Maximize Your Presence.
Ah.
And it's really about the role of executive presence, uh, the role it plays in your career. And so many times people hear that term, or many people haven't heard the term, but sometimes when people hear the term executive presence, they automatically think higher level leadership. And that's really not what it's about. It's about the I would like to call it the wow factor you bring, and what people notice about
Mhm.
you when you walk into a space, the thought leadership, it's just the whole encompassing presence that you
Why do I
bring.
want to say the charisma? I don't know what the right word is.
Yeah, charisma is part
Yeah.
of it. There's different
Yeah.
components of it, but all of those things combined together between your knowledge and your understanding, your accomplishments, your communication, the way you present yourself, like you said, the charisma, all these things working together uh, helps to relay a sense of accomplishment, not just accomplishment. That's not the word I was looking for. Confidence in yourself, which in turns helps others to be confident in you. And so I'm working on that, but I am not developing it as fast as I would like to.
That's going to be a good one. And you think
Yeah, yeah, I believe
that
so.
will be, available to anyone who wants to hear it. When it's
Yeah,
unveiled,
yeah, yeah,
we'll definitely be watching for that. What's the best way for folks to reach you? Just LinkedIn?
yeah. LinkedIn, Nicole C as in cat, Calhoun,
Okay.
Calhoun. Best way to reach out to me. If you send me a message, let me know. you connect with me, first of all, send me a message and let me know how you got connected with me. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out.
Okay, well, I'll definitely, in the show notes, I'll link to your profile. I don't know if that's a good thing to do on YouTube or not, but I will do it.
Okay. Okay. Thank
Nicole,
you.
I really want to thank you for joining us on Titans Transition. I love the work you're doing. Great nuggets shared. I love that whole concept of showing up as your whole self. In particular, that I think that, wow, there's so much around that one. There's so much around
Oh,
that
yeah.
one. But anyway, it's great to reconnect with you. We had such a fun time working together on the Maxwell team
Oh, we
projects.
did.
Haven't been to a meeting in a while. Maybe I'll see you back there sometime in the next year or so. But again, thanks for joining us on Titans.
Thank you, Joe.
Hey, thanks for joining me today on Titans of Transition. I hope you enjoyed the episode. Please check the show notes for additional information.